What would you say is probably one of the hardest things for a parent who finds themselves about to have a prem baby?
I also wear the hat of being a mom of 3 prem babies, so I speak sort of from both perspectives today. I think there's an immense amount of fear. Fear actually remains for quite some time.
Because a prem can be, anything under 37 weeks. So the variety of prems is also huge.
To think that 5 weeks makes such a big difference in a baby's life when it comes to NICU. Literally every month that passes, where you can see that health-wise they are a bit more delicate. But yeah, where my daughter was able to tolerate certain things like colds and flus, he just struggles a lot more. I think this is something that I would like to have heard then, is that you're doing an amazing job. Just breathe in, take it day by day, go as slow as you want to go, enjoy every moment with your baby because they grow so quickly.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk Baby. And today I'm joined by my beautiful co-host, Dr. Jenny Rose. Welcome, Jenny.
Thanks, Kath. Lovely to be here as always.
Yeah, I just love our chats and our time together. And today is the topic we're going to be speaking about in light of Premature Awareness Month this month. We're going to be talking about prematurity and the journey of parents who do find themselves having a baby who is born prematurely. So I really look forward to this time and just chatting about some of these realities and what that feels like to have a baby who is prem. So just to kind of start us off on this journey, what would you say is probably one of the hardest things for a parent who finds themselves about to have a prem baby or who have just given birth to a prem baby?
Sure. I think there are so many things. And obviously I sit today with my hat as someone that sees a lot of moms or parents that have had NICU experiences and lots of, processing of those traumas and struggles. But I also wear the hat of being a mom of 3 prem babies. So I speak sort of from both perspectives today. And I think, there are a couple of things that really stand out for me. I think the first one is fear. I think that initial phase of knowing that you're about to deliver a prem baby or being in the NICU and being on all these different machines and seeing them and alarms going off and seeing how tiny your baby is, I think there's an immense amount of fear. And quite interestingly, I think that fear actually remains for quite some time. Even when your baby is home, I think there's still so many layers of fear, and we can chat a little bit more in detail about that fear a bit later. But I think fear is such an immense part of that journey initially. And then the second thing I think that is so big is this idea of being robbed of so many of the experiences that we had imagined and envisioned. And I often say to parents, we naively, when you are newly married or, newly pregnant, have these visualizations and these ideas of what this is going to look like. And the reality is very often those pictures we have in our mind are actually so far from reality anyway, even with a full-term baby. But I think when you have a prem baby, that bubble pops sort of even more dramatically. And I think what is difficult is realizing the expectation in your mind versus the reality is so far from one another. And that comes with an immense amount of loss, of grieving, of real processing the things that you are losing out of. There's so many things that you sacrifice and that you give up being a prem mom. Things like being able to take your baby home when you leave the hospital. Things like holding your baby after delivery. Sometimes people even mourn the pregnancy, losing out on the last 2 or 3 months of the pregnancy that you didn't get to experience. And I think there's a great number of losses that continue to come in that prem journey while your baby is still so little.
Yeah, I think, you've hit the nail on the head with regards to the fear, the loss of the journey there. And I think that also is just really something that always breaks my heart when I see the parents in the NICU and just their kind of experiences and just those feelings in the early days. And I think that also the unknown, because there's quite a lot of preparation when it comes to having a term baby and all the challenges you're going to face around that. But when it comes to kind of the NICU environment and the unknown of your baby's journey, being born prem, and, because a prem can be, anything under 37 weeks. So the variety of prems is also huge. So you can even have spoken to a mom of another prem baby, but maybe that prem baby was 32 weeks and yours is 28 weeks. And so the journeys are so different. And also, I love what you said about the loss. I often find that in my field when working with the moms with regards to the breastfeeding, the idea that they could latch their babies and now suddenly not able to latch initially, and having to express and also sometimes the moms of a prem baby are sick and are not able to even provide breast milk in the beginning, and that feeling of guilt as well. I think guilt is something, I don't know if you want to speak a little bit to guilt before we bring in our guest, because we're very excited because we've got a very special guest who'll be joining us just now. So maybe just before we bring her in, maybe just briefly speak about guilt.
For sure. I think, guilt is such a big part of the picture. And I think what often happens is, I talk about prem babies and NICU experiences as really setting up a vulnerability of these parents to a sort of trauma response. I think most moms, I'm a big advocate of being very mindful of moms being at risk for postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. But I feel so strongly that the NICU parents are at risk of postpartum PTSD. I really feel like there's an immense trauma response that is involved in that experience. And where that really becomes difficult or often stagnated is that there's so much guilt as well. Many of the moms I see often go back and think, what did I do to contribute to this picture? What did I do incorrectly? And what could I have done differently? I shouldn't have done this. And so there's an immense amount of guilt. And I think as a parent, to see your child struggle is one of the most difficult things to ever experience. And so when you feel like maybe you had a hand in that, or you played some sort of role in contributing to that struggle, it's a terrible place to be in. But I think there's so much guilt that is part of a NICU journey.
Yeah, so I think we've kind of highlighted three elements: fear, the loss of a journey that you envisaged, and then guilt. And I know that at the end of the show, you're going to give us a few handles on how to deal with that, because you're always so practical. But before we get to that point, we have the privilege of welcoming one of the NICU moms who I've gotten to know. She's part of our NICU support group, and I'm going to bring her in now.
Hi, everybody.
Hi. Good, thanks, and you. So lovely to have you here.
Thank you so much. Lovely to be here. Thank you for asking me to come on here.
So, Shameemah, do you want to just give us a bit of a background to your NICU journey with your little boy, and maybe just highlight some of the real challenging things and even some of the maybe positive experiences that you experienced?
Sure. So our journey was quite different. We knew that he would need to go into NICU because of birth complications. How long, we weren't sure. That was completely dependent on him. The journey itself was a bit of I think it's a lot to take in, especially if you're going through postpartum and you're trying to find your emotions and not being able to see baby after birth. You have to recover. You need to start walking before you can actually see your bub, which I think was a great motivation for me, at least. But yeah, NICU was different, although I do appreciate, the special unit that there is for babies like this. It was a bit of an adjustment because, this was my second baby. With my first baby, she was full term, so I got to keep her, I got to take her home, I got to be with her after birth, do skin to skin, that kind of thing. And it was really tough with Yahya was we couldn't do that. We couldn't hold him. We couldn't pick him up. He needed to be on certain oxygen levels before we could pick him up, and they needed to take him off certain machines before we could touch him. And that was tough, being a mom and birthing this baby, and then just having to kind of stand there and, that's all you could do is look at them and speak to them and all of that. But what I really did appreciate with NICU is that they gave you peace of mind throughout everything. You could call whenever you wanted to call, and I called. I called at 2 a.m. when I couldn't sleep and I was thinking about him. I'd call, and they were all so lovely about it, reassuring me that he was okay, that he was doing well. They'd give me, his sats, how much he ate, how much he drank, and then you could be there the very next morning and you could spend practically the whole day there. And I think it was also nice because, they sent moms home, and I think that was so important for recovery as well, to go home and rest and really use that time to focus on yourself, and trying to find, your feet in that time. And a lot of moms that I've spoken to was telling me, that's the hardest part of NICU is leaving your bub behind. And I can understand that. But I also think that if you kind of switch it up and you think about it as in, this is me time where I can take and I can recover and I can regroup and I can, rest. Because when baby comes home, there's none of that. And with a full-term baby, there is none of that kind of perk. So to speak. So, I mean, it was a good thing. It was tough emotionally as well when he got home because he was a different baby and here he is now.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Hi.
Health-wise as well, very different to a full-term baby.
So maybe just talk a little bit to that, because I think the reality is that your journey with the prem baby doesn't just end in your neonatal ICU stay. It goes beyond that. And that is, one of the reasons why we created that NICU support group, because it's really necessary and really needed. So maybe just talk a bit to that reality.
So we've got, like I mentioned before, we've got a 4-year-old, and what had happened was she had come home one day with RSV. Yahya was 5 weeks old, and according to his actual age, he's supposed to have not been born yet. So what had happened was she had RSV. We were unaware because she was handling it, okay, but he was struggling to breathe. We took him into hospital. He got admitted into ICU. He got ventilated because he was struggling. Oh. And it's just so crazy to think that 5 weeks makes such a big difference in a baby's life when it comes to NICU. And it's not just after birth, it's literally every month that passes where you can see that health-wise they are a bit more delicate. And it's tough because they do take, I think, knocks a lot harder than your full-term babies. And it's something that you need to, and people, tell me I'm a bit too overprotective when it comes to Yahya, but having a prem baby is so different. Is your shoe on? Having a prem baby is so different in terms of everything, really. Firstly, the size, they are tiny. You have no idea how to handle them, but health-wise, completely different. Even up until today, it's very different with Yahya, where my daughter was able to tolerate certain things like colds and flus. He just struggles a lot more than what she did. And it's been a tough journey because you need to know for the signs to look out for when they are really struggling, and they get infections super quickly. So
Jenny, Jenny, just speak a little bit to the overprotectedness and the reality of that feeling. Like, would you say that's a common feeling amongst the moms of premature kids?
100%. And I think just to expand a little bit on that, the idea of, the health complications that you experience for quite some time. I think, like anything in life, if you haven't been through something like this or know someone close to you, you really don't understand what it is like to have a prem baby or have the NICU experience. And so what we typically see is that when you finally get to go home, after however long that might be, 3 months or 30 days, or whatever that journey is, but when you finally get to go home, most people in your support system make the mistake of thinking, okay, well, now you're home and all good and everything's fine. And they don't realize how long this journey actually is, having a prem baby, that it's often years of having to be overly protective, having to be super cautious. You know, just before we started the podcast, Kath and I were chatting about my kids and her kids. And I said, you know, we've just had a terrible winter. They've been so sickly, and that's still the result of prematurity, that they are just more vulnerable and they struggle to recover from those colds and flus and things. And so there are implications for often years down the line. And so, of course, we are going to see parents being more protective. I think moms especially, but parents kick into this very sort of action-based mode of, my child is vulnerable and my child struggled, and now I need to step up and protect them. Often where they felt they couldn't do anything, your hands feel very tied in the NICU. You know, so much has been out of your control. You know, the birth didn't go as it was supposed to. You've spent weeks in the NICU, and suddenly you then go into this overprotective mode of, now that I have my baby, I will ensure that they are fine, and I will do everything to make sure that they're at risk again. And I think why that is so entrenched is that when you are in the NICU, there is very real life and death worry. There is very real concern and fear. This is not fear that my child's going to get a bad flu and be out of school for a couple of weeks, or, you know, keep us up at night. These fears are very much based in, my child might not be okay. And so that mentality is very hard to shift. It often stays with NICU parents of this idea that I need to be overprotective. I need to form that barrier and protect them from any struggle that might come their way, because they are more vulnerable. And it's a very difficult process of letting go, to actually let them just be, and be kids that you feel like you can take a deep breath and let them be like you would with maybe, you know, your eldest, the same sort of approach. Because what happens is sometimes our own anxiety gets caught up in that process and interferes somewhat.
I I think that's so helpful. And would you say, Shameemah, sorry, how do I pronounce your name? I'm not saying it. Shameemah.
Yes.
Okay. Would you say that your journey kind of post-NICU has been helped by having the support around you of moms who have had similar situations? I mean, I can see on the support group that we run, you're an amazing support to the moms. Do you feel supported in the context of that support environment? And do you think it's important for moms of premature babies to have that sort of support?
Absolutely. I felt so much support from that group. I mean, there are mums that are out of NICU in that group for some time, that may have encountered something that I have no idea about when it comes to Yahya and how to handle it, because he's a prem baby, and somebody would always jump in and give advice. And I think that's so wonderful. And besides, you know, all of that, all of the emotions that come with it, it's a very nice kind of open platform, a safe space, you could say, where people are able to vent how they feel. If you're having a bad day, you know, there's always somebody that will be there to catch you, to help you, motivate you, to drive you through everything, to give you advice. And it's been such a lovely group. And I think it's actually quite a privilege, because I don't know of any other NICU unit that has done something like this. And it's super helpful. It's been so helpful. It's been so lovely to know that if you're having a bad day, or if you're really in, like, you know, you have no idea what to do, that you can really just pick up your phone and message in the group when it comes to food or drinking or behavior or sicknesses. Anything goes in that group, and you feel so unjudged and so welcomed and so loved and so heard. And I think that is super, super, super important in any mom's life.
I love that. And I think for moms out there who maybe don't have that support, try and create it or find it or inquire about it, because I really do think the value that it adds is enormous and really big. So maybe you can just give us your top tips for just kind of in closing from your side, just with regards to a mom who's going through a current NICU experience at the moment, and a mom who is kind of just exiting out of the NICU. So what would be kind of your top tip for someone who's just embarking on the journey, and then your top tip for someone who's just kind of been now discharged and bringing this little baby home?
I would say if anybody had to give me advice, and I think this is something that I would like to have heard then, is that you're doing an amazing job. Just breathe in. Take it day by day, go as slow as you want to go, enjoy every moment with your baby, because they grow so, so quickly. And if you are ever in a struggle or ever, unsure, don't be afraid to ask, whoever it is, and don't feel ashamed about it. I think a lot of it comes from mums who think, this is such a silly question, and what would they think of me if I really had to ask something like that? Don't ever think that. No question is too silly, too big, or too small to babies, especially pre-babies. So that would be my advice, is that, ask away and be, and I don't know how a lot of people would feel about this, but firm with about your baby and about your rules and about your boundaries. If they've just come out of NICU and you would like, some time alone with baby, or you would want baby to be a month into the house without having anybody come inside, just so that you can find your feet, voice that. Your and your instincts as a mother is valued. And it's almost always spot on. Listen to your instincts. Go with your gut.
I love that. Thank you. Sure. Thank you so much for being part of this today. It's such a privilege. And I was telling Dr. Jenny how excited I was to have you on the show, and to because I've so enjoyed you on the group, and will continue to enjoy you on the group, the way you kind of just are so real. And that's what I love about you. And I think that's something I can add to kind of your tips, is just be real, be real. If you're having a bad day, just let it out, because I think that it can be so helpful as well. So thank you so much.
Here we go. We've got a stone that just came out of his mouth. I mean, it's
of course.
To add before we close is just, I found with Yahya, having a physio, having a dietitian, having a nutritionist, having a speech therapist, all of those things are super, super important. I never had that with her, and I wish that I knew about it, or how important all the time, because their movement is different, their digestive system is different. And to have people that kind of take that stress away from you and guide you and help you and give you what you need in that time, without you having to think like, is this right? Is this what they're supposed to be doing? Is this what they're supposed to be eating? How much of this are they supposed to be eating? So if you can, invest in those kind of professionals to help you through your
100%. Hey, lovely way to end with him. Bye, big guy. We will see you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Have a good day.
You
Thanks,
too.
Shameemah.
Bye. So, Jenny, just to conclude, as we just end this amazing podcast with that fantastic, awesome mom guest that we had today on the show, and a little cute baby. Just as we started the show, we spoke about fear. Maybe just give us kind of a point just on fear, on guilt and loss. I know those are huge topics just on their own, but if I can ask you just in a nutshell, give us just a practical kind of take-home message for each of those elements that moms are going to feel.
I think maybe to speak to them all collectively, because I think there are a lot of other things that certain parents feel around loss or even disappointment. There's anger that's often involved. So there's a lot of complex emotions that can be present as part of the NICU journey. And so for me, there's two sort of key things. The one is actively make sure you have support, whether that is in the form of family members, your multidisciplinary team, getting into a therapy space, or joining fellow NICU moms and support groups like that. But being able to have a team of support is critical. And if people who have walked a similar journey can offer that support, even better, because I think it's really helpful to know that you are not alone in the struggle. So that's a really big one for me. The second one is that I think we place immense pressure on ourselves as NICU graduate parents, because we think then that, and I can remember, I always say, I've made a promise to myself that I desperately wanted my eldest to be at home and to sleep, that I said I would never, ever complain about waking up in the night for her, because it would mean that she would be at home. And that obviously did not last very long, because at some point I would obviously get super frustrated that I was waking a million times a night. But this is the mistake that we make. We think that because we have had this struggle and we've, to keep them alive and to get them to this point has been such a big thing, that we think we need to sort of wallow in gratitude and enjoy absolutely every moment. We cannot take a single thing for granted. We need to really, not complain about a single thing. And how dare I say this is hard, I'm not enjoying this part, or I'm struggling with that part. And we've got to lose that expectation that you are still able to say, I'm struggling with this, or this part of parenthood I'm finding really difficult, or I don't enjoy this. Because we are not expecting this idea of perfection and holding on to absolute, I love every component of it. We want to come back to what you're saying, as being a little bit real and be able to access that you can complain and moan and struggle and have difficulty while still having immense gratitude that your child is home and safe and well.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. And I think that's such a beautiful place to end on. So moms out there, if you are in the NICU journey, or you're facing prematurity, or you've come out of the NICU journey and are an ex-prem mom, we just want you to know that we understand, we're here for you, and we know you've got this. And as our guest so beautifully put it, you are good enough and you're doing an amazing job. And just keep being real. Showing up and just being real. That's all that's required of you, nothing more. So thank you, Jenny, for another amazing podcast this morning, and look forward to the next one. And thank you everyone for joining us on Let's Talk Baby, and we look forward to seeing you again.